See what he do to me?
All right, y'all ready? Okay, okay, there he is. Making sure we've still got a quorum. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Birmingham City Council. Today is February 20th. First item of business is consideration of the minutes of the December 19th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting.
I move for approval.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That doesn't sound like there's any objections, so those minutes are passed as written. Next item is Administrator Kidd's report.
Good afternoon, councilors. A very quick budget agenda report here, and you should have the packet before you. First of all, we have provided for you the department budget performance. Right now, we are at about 53% utilization, which is really good, but I would encourage you to start spending. Also, we have the budget due date for our budget to be turned back into the budget office is February the 29th. Our department hearing is March 21st at 2:30, and it will be by WebEx. Also, Campbell Partners, the law firm Campbell Partners is currently reviewing, the law department is currently reviewing the appointment letter. And right now, we're working with them to secure their 2024 tax license. At this point, there is no action taken on the communication media plan, but we do anticipate that to come forward after your meeting on the 26th of February. The next order of business is the district budget. We also have a few of our counselors who have a little above 50% or greater in their discretionary accounts. And we want you to get with us. Mr. McDaniels and Connie will be talking with you as to what and how you want to dispose of your dollars. For staff and office concern, approximately 298 bills have been filed in the Alabama legislature, and there is a strong possibility that more will be filed. This is being brought to your attention because the council did express receiving a weekly update from the lobbying team. Garrett, and I hope I get this right, Crapius, his last day with District 5 office will be this Friday, February the 23rd. Garrett has accepted a full-time job with UAB, and we want to wish him well. Yeah. Also attached for your review are the two positions that we are seeking to fill in central staff. And unless otherwise directed, we would go forward to publish those, and they are an assistant PIO and a videographer. We also want to thank Chief Mitchell for creating a little bit more comfort for those such as India, for the cushions that are located behind the dais. So thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Do more. And speaking of comfort, we do realize that the chamber can get quite chilly, and we started on yesterday, as we have been talking with Public Works, to monitor the temperature, and we will continue to do so. Conference Room A, we are continuing our conversations about getting connectivity to the new table that we will be acquiring to run the new board that we have in the chamber, in Conference Room A. Also under departmental concerns, we know that we have secured March 18th, and that is confirmed with the mayor for the budget town hall, but we are still waiting some other details around that town hall. There are, not to my knowledge, any constituents' complaints or concern. I do want you to note your travel and events as we know them right now, and they're located on the back of your agenda. The Masquerade Ball, Mayor's Masquerade Ball with UNCF is March 9th, downtown at the Sheraton. National League of Cities, as most of you know, is March 11th through the 13th, and we continue to work with the administration's GA team and external partners to develop an itinerary for you. Pre-conference activity starts March 9th. The BBA's Governmental Affairs Committee will host a Representative Nathaniel Ledbetter, Speaker of the House of Representatives, on March 18th at 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I don't have a location at the BBA. An NCRC conference, Just Economy, is April the 2nd through the 4th. And we have some time around the Alabama League of Municipality Convention, which is May 15th through the 18th, and it is in Huntsville. And there is a note for the president relative to your responsibility of selecting 3 voting delegates. Lastly, Mr. McDaniels is interacting with the Alabama League of Municipalities to secure a potential meeting place for our next Economic Development Academy cohort meeting. Once that information is received, it will be shared with you. Each of you should have received an invitation to the AHSAA Regional Basketball Games. If not, please let us know. And that concludes my report. And if there's any questions or further directive, we're always open.
All right. Don't see any questions, or I just did want to let the council know that, as you're aware, we've been working on preparing materials relative to that March 18th collaborative meeting / town hall with the mayor's office, and one of the critical components of that initiative is developing a booklet or handbook that helps the public understand how the budgeting process works. Council Pro Tem Alexander and I have reviewed the draft version of that booklet. As recently as yesterday, I requested one additional piece of information, but that be included in the booklet. But a draft version should be sent out to you all, probably by end of business tomorrow. Our timeline is to get a request to have that booklet printed into the print shop early next week, so no later than Tuesday. So when you receive the draft version of the booklet tomorrow afternoon, please take some time to look at it and provide any feedback. Please recognize that we don't have space to accommodate wholesale, rewriting. So if you don't like it, please reserve those types of comments. I think we're making a big step forward in doing this at all. So just recognize that, let's not let perfection be the enemy of the good. But I think it's really good, in my opinion. And but anyway, again, the objective is to get a final version to the print shop early next week. So again, when you receive it, latter part of tomorrow, please take a look at it and try and turn around any feedback that you may have to us, so that we can accommodate, any changes that you may want to see, and go ahead and be on schedule to get that turned around by the print shop. That if we meet that timeline, we should have copies of it available to distribute the week before the 18th, and that can be part of the how we advertise about the event. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. All right. Next up on our agenda is the presentation of the annual comprehensive financial report.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon to the council, as well as good afternoon to the public. Thank you for allowing us to present to you this afternoon. Mr. President and Council, in compliance with the City's Mayor Council Act, the submitted financial statements for the fiscal year that ended June 30th of 2023 were subjected to an independent audit. The City of Birmingham, the administration is pleased to present that the findings of that audit to you today. A couple of things I want to do is first start with some thank yous, and that is one, our external partner. Make sure I stick with my notes. But that is to Shepard Harris, our external partner. And as a certified public accountant, they led our audit process. So they're here and they'll be presenting in a minute, but I wanted to publicly thank them for their hard work. In addition to that, although Kevin Moore cannot be here, he leads the finance department's team. That is a dedicated team who participated in this effort. With that, the biggest team member who played an outsized role is Aaron Saxton. I want to thank him as well. He's here as well and will present to you as well. But all the other finance team members, as well as the entire staff of the finance department. Within the department, there's a division of general accounting, as well as the city's independent public accountants. That team collectively has allowed us to have this document in front of you. So at this time, have they received it? Everyone has it? Yes, of course you received the electronic copy, but we wanted to give you this hard copy today. So I'll be very high level, and then I will pass it to our internal and external team members. I'll start with a simple. We had some pretty good revenues for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2023. We definitely managed our department expenses. Another short version, the economy is doing well. And our fund balance continues to grow. And so at a high level, during the year, the city experienced an operating surplus of approximately $33.4 million in our general fund. To break that down a little bit more, revenues were approximately $25.8 million over the amended annual budget. Business tax collections, including sales, use, business license fees, and occupational taxes were the main revenue drivers for that surplus. And actual expenditures for the general fund revenue were $48 million less. $48 million less than the amended annual budget, with under budget savings in categories such as personnel, professional fees, fleet expenses, and a few others. So that is at a very high level. What I want to do is turn it over to the professional people who actually deal in numbers every day and who are way smarter than I am. So with that said, who's first? This young lady's first.
Good afternoon, councilors.
Good afternoon.
And thank you, Mayor Wolfen, for allowing us to make this presentation this afternoon. I am Connie Harris, president of Shepard Harris and Associates, and a proud resident of the city of Birmingham. This afternoon, I will give a highlights from the fiscal year 2023 annual comprehensive financial report. And I think you all have a copy of that. I will also give an assessment of the city's long-term fiscal health. Okay. The annual comprehensive financial report, and we call it the AFR, is really in three sections. You have the introductory section, which gives general information on the government structure, services, financial condition, and the environment. Then you have the financial section. This is where you will find the management discussion analysis and the actual financial statements, your notes, and the required supplementary information. Then you have the third part, which is the statistical section, which is found on page 153 through 205. This Africa report was completed and published on December 28th, 2023. It contains almost 205 pages, and it provides a wealth of financial information regarding the financial condition of the city of Birmingham. Like I said, I'll go over just the highlights of this report. First, the good news. As the external auditors, we gave the city an unmodified opinion. This is a clean opinion. It simply states that, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly stated. The unmodified opinion results in investors, creditors, rating agencies, and other interested parties reading this after, they can rely on the audited financial statements. Also on this independent auditor's report, you'll find a section that says management responsibilities and the auditor's responsibility. The management responsibility is just, they prepare the financial statement. We as auditors, we attest whether that information is fairly stated. This Africa report, it complies with state law, general accepted accounting principles, and also this entire report, they received the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting. Also good news, like Mayor Wolfen just said, your fund balance grew over the fiscal year, ending June 30, 2023. Now, the not so good news. Even though the city position, the net position, which is your assets minus your liabilities, increased in your governmental activities, but the net position remains a negative balance. As of 2023, the net position for the governmental activities increased by $146.5 million and now stands almost at a negative $328.7 million. Like I said, that's a negative balance. That negative balance, it includes that net position liability, the net pension liability, which nearly $702 million. The net position is at June 30th, 2023, is $328.7 million negative. But in that amount is your net pension liability, which is required.
And that's police and fire and regular?
Yes.
So the way that, sorry, excuse me, the 328.7 amount that would be arrived at by taking that total net pension liability of $702 million and deducting what the balance in the pension currently to arrive at that $328 million number.
Yes, that net, the pension, you know, we get that from the actuary report. Mm-hmm. And that has to be shown on the city's financial statement. Let me give you a little more about the statement of net position. That's found on page, what page is that? Your net position Let me tell you how it's arranged. You have your assets for the city, that's what the city owns. And your liabilities is what the city owes. And the difference between that, that's your net position. And in that net position is your pension liability. And that's found on page 16 of your report. At June 30th, 2023, the total assets and deferred outflows, it was a little over 1.6 billion. But if you look a little further, your liabilities was a little bit over 2 billion. So the difference of that is your net position, which, like I said, is the difference between the two, a negative 328 million. Okay?
Mr. President.
And just remember, the asset is what you own, the liability is what you owe, and that's the net position. This is the governmental activities. The staff would come up and they'll go over some detail that you all see every month.
Yeah.
Okay?
Chief Mitchell?
Because I see the faces, and I just want to make sure I make the faces recognize what's really going on. So what's being said is that because we carry this negative balance due to our unfunded net pension obligation, that shows that we are not in line with what our revenues or our assets versus our liabilities are saying.
Right.
So if you recall that the state legislature passed a law that we shore up that negative net pension obligation for the R&R, which is the big board. So that is a steady thing that we're doing year on year and putting more money into that. Now, if you look at the F&P, which I know you're aware of, it has not a much larger net position of negative balance on the pension board. We're trying to find a way to endorse some more funding into that to make it more solid. So right now, we won't be at that point. That is a steadily increasing thing that we're trying to do to be more solvent in our pension. And that's what she noted about the actuary position. Once we can close that gap, which we had almost an infinitive thing of having to pay it off, we're down to like, I don't know, Mr. Saxon, we're down to like the 20 years now, the 15, yeah. So we're closing that gap. And so you'll see every year that number will actually increase, but our overall will start kind of showing up, and we have more assets than liabilities.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Moving on to the statement of activities, your governmental activities, which is your revenues and your expenses. The total revenues for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2023 was a little over 686 million, while your expense was a little over 548 million, which the change in that position was a little over 137 million. So that's good. And like I said, at the end of the year, your net position ended up, they started out with 466, a negative 466, but because the revenues was more than the expenses, your net position is a negative 328,664. Okay?
We're not as bad also as we used to be.
Right. And then I thought you maybe want to just, what goes into this net position? So I put a sheet in there. What can increase your net position is your external grant funding of capital improvements, your funding capital improvements from your current cash flow, and your surplus of revenues that are unspent, used to pay down your liabilities. That's a positive effect to your net position. So what's the other side that can bring the net position down? The increases in your pensions and other similar liabilities, and your non-cash expenses like depreciation. Okay? So where are we now, post-pandemic? Getting back to a realistic base. You can continue to control expenses, you can increase revenues, or some combination of the above. So what are the consequences of not taking any action? You might have budget shortfalls and reductions, or you might have reduction in services, or you might have a long-term fiscal impairment. So in summary this afternoon, I say the city's Africa for the fiscal year ending 2023 shows that the city is in full compliance with all required accounting procedures and standards. The city's current financial position is strong. The non-GAAP adjustments, which is your pension and your OPEB, to the net position, help to better understand the factors affecting the city fiscal health. So I say, continue to develop and implement policies and practices to bolster financial health that will help avoid financial impairments. And finally, I would like to thank the Finance Department for providing us with all needed information to complete this document. It was a huge undertaking. So thank you, Finance Department. And that concludes my presentation.
Counselor Smithers?
What's the state law number that required us to reduce that negative balance with the pension liability? Do you remember? I don't need it like right now.
You mean the bill we passed to mandate ourselves to fund the pension?
Yeah, remind me. Yeah,
You want the bill number?
yeah.
We'll get it.
Okay.
We'll get it.
And then how much, because you've said it before, since you've been in office and about 5 of us since 2017, how much money have we put towards reducing that pension amount?
Aaron will tell you that number.
Because I remember when I first got in office in like 19, and this is a positive, I remember you were telling us we needed to throw a lot of money at it. It's in here.
Yes, ma'am. Aaron Saxton, I serve as Deputy Chief Financial Officer. A little more about that deficit. If you would turn in your annual comprehensive financial report to page 112 and 113. If you look in the 2023 column, up top, you'll find under total pension liability ending, you see that balance of $1.67 billion. If you would compare that to the net position ending in that same column of $1.085 billion, the $1.085 billion are the assets of the pension fund. The 1.6 is the liability. That creates a deficit of the $587 million. And that's what makes our net position number negative. But if you would look at those two pages together, hold on. So if you would turn to page 117 and 118. This shows the history of the city's employer contributions towards the retirement and relief plan. When Mayor Woodfin took office, his first fiscal year would have been 2018. In that year, our contributions toward the retirement plan were $17 million. And you can see that number steadily increasing each year, a big jump in 2020. And you can see this past year, $39.8 million went into the retirement and relief plan, really in excess of the actuarially determined contributions that our actuary gave us. So from 17 million all the way up to $40 million. So substantial increases have been contributed towards the pension under this administration, under the council.
Okay.
Mr. President, to Aaron's point and to your colleague, Chairwoman of the Budget and Finance Committee, Crystal Smitherman's question, this is a really big deal. Aaron, I don't remember the year where the law was changed with the counting and how public reporting is doing where your pension becomes an asset or a liability. But when that changed, we needed to hold ourselves internally accountable. And it didn't need to be politically motivated. I know prior to our administrations just kicked this issue down. They kicked this can down the road so far, we had nowhere to go but to pick the can up. But in doing so, we set ourselves up with that state law, which we're going to get that number to you,
Okay.
hopefully before this meeting is over. But it's now required and mandated, so we can't politicize what we should put in. We can't negotiate what we should put in or take from somewhere else. We have to fund it. And that sets long-term and in the immediate, actually, a genuine investment in our employees and their future as it relates to their retirement.
It really makes me very elated, honestly, very happy that we are investing in our employees, especially the pension, especially taking such a big financial responsibility that we were given. So I'm really happy to hear that. I'm really happy to hear that the city is very financially healthy so far. So thank you, Mr. President.
HB 510, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I don't know if HB 510.
Okay.
So, Mr. President, at this time, we would like to continue the presentation with Mr.
I
Saxon.
believe Council Williams had a question.
Oh, I didn't know the presentation was still going.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Just backing up a little bit, today we wanted to do an overview of our financials for 2023. I got it. Financial highlights, there'll be a summary of revenues and expenses. We'll go over fund balances for general fund and the Birmingham Fund. We'll touch a little specifically on the Birmingham Fund and then take any questions that you have. Mayor already really gave you an overview. $33.4 million was the surplus in the general fund, primarily due to business tax collections, which were strong. Also, our management of expenses, where expenses were $48 million under budget. Our net position increased by 147 million. And whenever you hear that term net position, that means that you're talking about all funds government-wide, including pensions, including healthcare, everything. And that's, that general fund surplus was a part of that. Also, governmental funds, which we also present financials on a fund basis, in addition to the government-wide basis. Those fund balances total up to $633 million for the funds. And I have Ms. Jokes, Deshana Jokes, who's our comptroller. She's going to come up and talk about revenues, expenses, and briefly about fund balances.
Good afternoon. So I'll briefly talk about a summary of our revenues and give you some visuals of them and how they perform so far. So how has the revenue collection changed over the years? So in 2021, our total revenues was about $479 million. That was in 21. And then in 22, it increased to $522 million. And then in 23, we increased to about $544 million. So over that time, revenue increased from 21 to 22, it increased about 8.3%. And then from 22 to 23, it increased about 4.2%. And so here's just a pie chart showing you what is the makeup of our revenue. And as you can see, 81% of our revenue is business taxes. And that was about $439 million. So I'll break out business taxes for you so you can see what made up that $439 million. So 33% of our business taxes is from sales tax. That's about 145 million. And then next, we have occupational tax at 118 million. Our business tax is at 92 million, and then you have use tax, that's about 71 million. So those four alone, sales, occupational, use tax, and business license, makes up 97% of our business taxes, and that totals about 427 million. So here I am showing you a 3-year trend of the three largest revenue sources. So it's sales tax is in the blue, and then there's occupational tax orange, and business tax is in the gray. So from 21 to 22, our sales tax was up 11%, and then from 22 to 23, it was up 2%. Our occupational tax from 2021 to 2022 and 22 to 23 both increased by 7% each of those years. And then our business licenses from 21 to 22, it increased 11%, and then in 23, it went up another 7%. Now I'll go over our expenses. So over these 3 years, our expenses have, from 21, went from about 396 million, and that's in 22, it went up 426 million. So that's a 7% increase from 21 to 22. And then from 22 to 23, our expenses went up by 11%. And if you look at that chart, that bar graph, you will see our largest expenses, and each of those are personnel services. And then the next one is our contributions to boards and agencies. So contributions to boards and agencies from 21 to 22 went up 19.7%, and then from 22 to 23, it increased 29.6%. And so this is a pie chart just showing you where the bulk of our expenses are paid. And of course, that's personnel services. And then the next at 7% are our contributions to boards and agencies. And so our total expenses in our general fund was about 476,517,000. Up next is our fund balance. I believe several have talked about this already, so I'm just going to talk about our general fund balance, and so you'll know where we are with that. Once again, we received a surplus of 33.5 million, and that was due to, we anticipated some declines in revenue due to the pandemic still, but our revenue collections increased, and they remain consistent, and our tax revenues went up as well. Business tax and some of our bank excise tax increased as well. So revenues were approximately $26 million over our original budget. And then we'll talk about this Birmingham fund balance. So we currently have $100,714,000 in our Birmingham fund balance, and it experienced an increase of 7% from 22 to 23. We had a decrease from 21 to 22 of 13%, but it increased this year by 7%. And mainly investment income contributed to the increase, and then the fact that we only spent $7.1 million in expenses. So Deputy Chief Saxton will give you more details on this Birmingham fund.
All right. As far as the Birmingham Fund, you know that we have regular appropriations that are made every year of 5%. Those are done as part of our budget cycle, where you guys approve the transfer of that 5% into the general fund every year. So I just wanted to go over some of those guidelines for regular appropriations and extraordinary appropriations. So regular appropriations cannot exceed that 5%, and the 5% is the average market value for a 5-year period. But you can also have extraordinary appropriations of those Birmingham funds in excess of that 5% if the following conditions are satisfied. At least 5 members of the city council have to adopt the ordinance. The ordinance would have to specify a specific amount of money for a specific purpose. The ordinance would include findings that shows that the expenditure would be in the best interest of the city and its residents. It would have to be an extraordinary circumstance, and the ordinance would also have to be approved by the mayor. As of June 30th, that Birmingham fund balance was $104 million. I know you probably want to know what it is today. As of January 30th, it was 115 million. It's grown to 115 million. And we also had some return numbers where the investment managers are largely meeting their benchmarks. But that really concludes our presentation, and we're open for any questions that you have at this time.
Okay.
All right.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mayor and Finance Department, for this information. It's really informative. I was just curious, because I know as we move into the budget season, we have to, look at these historical revenue numbers to figure out, to try to project what our revenue is going to be next year to come up with the budget. So is there a place in here where we actually see how revenue came in compared to what we projected?
Yes, ma'am. On page, I wanted to say 21, no, it's,
23.
thank you, Mayor.
Which one is it?
Page 23,
Okay.
there is a report in here that compares your budget amounts to your actuals on revenues and expenses.
So the original or the final that would be our projection, and the actual would be what
This is-
came in?
Right. This is for 2023. You have the original budget that was passed, and then, amendments are made throughout the year to come up with a finalized budget number, and those are compared to the actuals. You have your variance column to the far right.
So would that mean that we were conservative in our budgeting compared to the income that actually came in that year?
Every year.
Yes, ma'am,
Every
every
year,
year.
okay.
We have to be.
Basically, if I remember from my conversation with the former Director of Finance, Lester Smith, he pretty much explained that, those projections are required to be very conservative.
Yeah, well, and I'll just tell you, from the administration standpoint, which includes Lester then and now Kevin and Aaron and the entire team, it's simple for us. There are only so many fixed things. So taxes can be regressive. In the case of sales taxes, which is our driver, how motivated are the 9 of you, plus the remaining almost 200,000 citizens willing to actually spend money to produce taxes for us? I'm using that as an example, and it may sound silly, but when it's things like that, or it's dependent on, I know something that even Ms. Abbott, who's been here for a while looks at the things we spend money on sports and entertainment, but you see that even that small revenue form is $4 million. That comes from our ability to bring people to our city. In return, they stay here in our hotels. And they also spend money, which increases sales taxes. And then we try to attract small business, retain small business, make small business processes more efficient and engage in the city, and creating economic opportunities because we're also dependent on business license as well as other forms of taxes. So yes, we are intentionally conservative, Mr. President and Ms. Clark, to your question, and we don't see that necessarily changing. We look at the whims around us, what's going on in the nation, and even what's going on with the state revenues. And you see their coffers if you're paying attention to their budget process. So we do feel blessed, but we have an amazing finance team that makes us make very wise, conservative decisions in our projections and how we budget and our expenses as it relates to once the budget is passed.
I have a question. So, kind of concerned that, we're, based on the fact that we had 48 million in surpluses in our expenditures, I'm concerned that, we're over budgeting for, that's 48 million that we accounted for in the budget that didn't get spent. So it looks like, a lot of that is coming from the police department, $12 million, Public Works Department, almost $7 million, Parks and Recreation, $3 million, Equipment Management, $6.5 million, and General Services, almost $17 million. That's $48 million that we'll now have to, figure out how to, what to do with. But I'm, concerned that we're putting in such big cushions in our budgeting. I think, I would think that we would want to approach the next budget cycle to try and reduce that number. Is that fair to say?
Mr. President, I don't know if I would use the word fair. I think we should talk out your concern. Try to be candid as possible. I think if you look at the snapshot graph that on page 11 that Aaron Saxon provided, you see personnel services is under the category of all 3 years, 2021, 22, and 23. And yes, you see an increase in personnel services, but it's on par also with the average embedded in the entire budget. Then you dig in that, we're supporting our existing employees every year with the cost of living adjustment. But then when you dig into that, the positions for each department that we give, whether it's field or not field, includes that cost of living adjustment as well. So that cost of living adjustment, even for that unfilled position, is going to follow the number you see, which is part of the increase. Now, forgive me for my delay in speaking, but if you look in your book on 23, remember this is also the fiscal year ended last year. So we're hoping that number decreases. In addition to that, I think when you saw that big number, not necessarily the 43, but years prior, let's say 21, 22, I think that concern was more legitimate on the personnel piece then. But you see a department like fire, they are filling their positions. Birmingham Police Department is no different than any other, I would say, mid-sized city right now or large city right now, or in the wake of George Floyd's death, as well as the height of retirement due to the coronavirus. Mid-sized and large cities' ability to fill positions in the police departments at the rate of the retirements, along with the distrust that unfortunate and untimely homicide created in George Floyd led to a lot of people and the next generation not necessarily wanting to be police officers, and police departments and city governments have to get creative in how we pull in people who may no longer desire to be officers. But our city's no different than what's nationally happening. I think you mentioned a few other departments, which included general services. Part of our conversations with the personnel board is to say, hey, this issue exists. It's taking too long to fill these positions in a 12-month period. We need to pool candidates faster. Help us expedite the process so we can fill these positions before the fiscal year ends.
Yeah, so, understood. Can you speak to, some of the inverse situation? So you mentioned, the fire department, they actually came in at 4.2 million over, what was originally budgeted, and, also human resources, 3.4 million over.
Well, I think, Aaron, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Attrition is calculated every year, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who's eligible for retirement and possible projected retires based on number of vacant positions and needed to be filled. And I think you see a situation in the fire department. The intangible that's happening is that of all public services in the entire nation, people trust the fire department the most. People want to be firefighters, and there's never a problem to fill those positions. And so those classes are big, and at the same time, I guess the calculated attrition didn't necessarily match. So you just have a lot of employees in the fire department, which is not a bad thing based on
Right.
our calls of services.
Yeah, no complaints. What about, human resources?
I will be making up an answer. I don't know. Aaron, you have any thoughts? I don't have any thoughts on HR,
So
Mr. President.
let me just mention, one of the things that the council is, interested, piece of information that we're interested in seeing is a, position control report for the city, to help us understand, where each of our departments, stand in terms of, positions budgeted versus the number that are actually what I call the positions that actually have a heartbeat. So, we know some of those departments, obviously, some of those departments have budgeted positions that don't have a heartbeat. So, I think a position control report, would be helpful to us to understand kind of where, those vacancies are. And, additionally, if it's not already included, understanding, those positions, how long they've been vacant.
I want to make sure we honor the council's request. I know I don't see any HR team members in this room. I doubt finance department uses the term position control. You do?
We do.
You want to explain? You have any response to him at top of mind without any documents shared here?
Well, what I was going to say is if you had any specific questions about line items, either on page 23, if you could just email those to us and we'll drill down and do the legwork and report back to you.
Let me define email to our office or Chance or Ms. Camila.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say generally, that I understand that this is a fiscal year '23 and we're in fiscal year '24, but we're about to move into the budgeting process for fiscal year '25. I, I doubt that there's going to be a big variance between fiscal year '23 and '24 because we largely didn't do, anything significantly different that would impact, that number, the $48 million surplus in expenditures. So I'm anticipating that fiscal year '24 will likely be in the same ballpark, I would expect. So what I'm saying is that moving forward into fiscal year '25, I would rather that us try to eliminate,
Not needed positions.
right.
Right. So
I don't want to end up with another fiscal year where we spent a heck of a lot less than we anticipated, and we knew that that was likely going to be the outcome because there's a bunch of positions that are not likely to be filled.
that is very fair. I don't think the administration is far off in that thinking. Aaron is here and other team members. Miss Diana is here and other team members, comp control, et cetera. And other team members that I didn't name by name are here from finance. But, I consider the process we go through every year of holding departments accountable in the budget process where they have requests and then we drill down hard on, making sure those requests are in line with the ability to produce. And the bulk of their requests is always going to come in the form of personnel. So from a global standpoint, I think we all know, set aside general services. Over here, public safety, you're going to have a heavy dose of employees in 3 departments: police, fire, and public works. And I remember this council and the mayor's office, those tough decisions we had to make during the coronavirus when the budget passed 6-3. It was the only time it ever happened. But what you saw us do, cut an extreme amount of down to the bone necessary in lieu of what we thought of projected revenues being lower, right? Turns out on the revenue end, it didn't end up that way. But coming back out of that, we got significant pushback from departments because there was an opportunity to, if you will, we peeled back, we popped the hood, we looked under, justify getting these positions back. And I know we did that in general services, but we also did that in police, we did that in fire, and we did it in public works. And what I can say, if I can use Chief Moon for an example, he made that request every year, getting those positions back. Made him justify. He was able to justify, and today he can fill them. Again, I'm just using him for an example. And so, cutting the fat out of these individual departments, we were actually able to do during that coronavirus budget. I think what's happening now is in police and in public works, two of the 3 largest departments, we have to continue to be aggressive in competitive wages, which we feel we are now, by the way. So again, some of that increase in the personnel costs is that you all have approved merit, you've approved COLAs. Healthcare cost goes up, so that's embedded in it. Pension cost goes up, so that's embedded in it as well. So on the personnel costs, you're right, the positions may not, you're not seeing an increase in positions. You want to know if the unfilled positions are what's the justification of the unfilled positions? And within the unfilled positions do some need to not exist? That's what I hear.
Right. I mean, my understanding is that the majority of that 48 million surplus is going to be, that's going to be the thing that contributed to that is unfilled positions.
So I understand it to be actually a $33 million surplus.
Yeah, on the.
Can you break down, if you look on the Roman numeral 4 of the book, last paragraph under 2023 operating results, can you break down this 33.4 and then this 48?
Where are you at, Mayor?
I'm in the book. I think this is introduction, but it's 4. Yeah.
The 33.4 was the surplus number. We tried to tie into it by telling you, you know, how revenues compare to budget, how expenses compare to budget. But in reality, we're only highlighting certain items. If you look at line by line throughout our whole budget, that's where you're gonna come back to the 33.4. I understand your concern as far as the overall surplus. You don't want us to generate an artificial surplus every year because of vacant positions. Years past.
Precisely.
Yeah, years past, I think maybe there was a practice where departments would have all these vacant positions that were budgeted. They knew they weren't going to fill them. And during the year, they would try to take the money they had left over in positions and transfer them to other line items that they could use, you know, kind of like a little cushy fund that they could go back to. But, you know,
Speaking my language.
we're hip to those processes. Our budget team is hip to it. Just like the mayor said, we're peeling back the layers and making the departments justify the positions that they ask for. In certain circumstances, they may come in and say, we need, 50 positions budgeted for a full year, but we know that they're not going to be able to hire all those positions, so the budget team may only budget for half those positions for the fiscal year. Or they may budget a certain number of positions for 6 months or 3 months, just based on what we think the actual results will be. But at the same time, we don't want to budget nothing knowing that they need certain positions. But we do understand your concern.
Right. So that's part of the reason why I'm asking for the position control report, and additionally, within that position control report, what is the duration of time that, any individual position has remained open?
So that duration is undetermined, only because that's a moving target, sir. I want to be very honest with you. That can change literally on a daily, weekly, monthly basis because we never stop hiring in combination with the process across the park. So that's a legitimate fluctuation.
Yeah, I understand, but, it would be, having been here now, 6 years and gone through, many of these cycles, it would seem to me that, certain departments have had, budgeted positions that year after year, we're pretty much guaranteed that they are going to remain vacant. And, I think part of it is exactly as you described, Mr. Saxon, that, there was a cushion built in, and, I won't speak to the intent or anything, but, it was understood going into it that it was very unlikely that all of those positions would be filled within the time frame of that budgeted fiscal year.
Well, Mr. President, we want to honor your request for you and your colleagues as it relates to the the position control. But Aaron was speaking to past tense. He was not speaking to what we
Correct.
as an administration does.
Right.
All you have to do is follow the trend. And so I think before we came into office, I think total budget was over 4,000 employees.
Correct.
And I think it's down to what now, 3,000 something. I don't even think it's more than 36 or 3,500. So I don't have that number off the top of my head, but what I do know is that it's not, if you just follow the trend over the years, we've gone from budgeting for over 4,000 plus employees to now over 3,000.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, to your point about, some of the staffing challenges and, departments having to justify these positions that get approved, what can we do differently? Because he mentioned, fiscal year '24 likely being like fiscal year '23 because maybe we haven't instituted anything radically different to get positions filled. I know we looked at some legislative changes regarding the personnel board, but notwithstanding that, I mean, because as you mentioned, the fire department somehow worked within the system we have to become fully staffed. So is there a strategy to model that, whatever they did somehow for other departments to work within the confines and constraints of what we have to, I mean, it just seems like they demonstrated a model that maybe we need to study and figure out how to apply to other departments, because I feel like we have money, but we don't have workers to do the work, and so the service level is going down.
So, again, kudos to the fire department. They have an abundance of the desire for people want to be firefighters and our ability to have competitive wages in the form of recruitment and retention bonuses. For the record, the police department has the same recruiting and retention bonuses as well. But what's going on in the nation as far as the desire of Generation Y and the desire of Generation Z, for those who want to go in public service, whether it's a nurse or a teacher or a firefighter or a police officer, we know there is a decreased trend in the following: police officers, teachers, nurses. We know it's either steady or an increase in firefighters. But as it relates to competitive wages and what the fire department is offering, other departments are offering as well. Now, general services may be different. What you do for an accountant or an engineer or architect or somebody in planning, I mean, those wages are what they are, and they're pretty competitive in isolation, so you don't need necessarily a bonus to attract. You just need a process that works, an onboarding process that's more efficient in conjunction with our existing model, which is the personnel board. But the two departments where you see a higher frequency of the ability to not fill the positions are in the other two public safety departments, which are police and public works. And it's a matter of us continuing to be aggressive. In my left hand, offering those retention and recruitment bonuses and being aggressive with our wages. But on the other hand, how do we communicate with Generation Y, Generation Z, who would be the new employees we will be onboarding into these public service positions? And how do you go out and create a lane or a path for people who may not choose this form of public service?
Yeah, I do feel like there's more we could do to sort of glamorize public service careers, maybe look in some other places, some unlikely, I guess, fish in some other ponds for police officers, maybe schools of social work instead of wherever we usually fish. I don't know. But,
Yeah,
I mean, are there some strategies? Is somebody figuring it out? Because I know the police, that might be a challenge, but how are we promoting public service careers and, trying to get people to think about them.
Right.
More.
Just say, because like the Public Works Department was one of those that had, the decreased expenditures of almost $7 million. And that definitely has a profound impact on our communities. That's $7 million that we had planned for that wasn't delivered to our communities.
Yeah, well, so that's, I'm gonna imagine, I know the majority of that was personnel, which if I'm looking at Ms. Abbott, she's gonna say we need those employees to deliver services. And the other eight of you all would say the exact same thing, to be clear. So I'm not picking on you at all, Ms. Abbott, just using you as an example. The point I'm making is if you look at our HR policies, our HR procedures, along with once they become employees, along with um, along with being on probation for a year, I think all 10 of us would agree there are certain challenges that present that employee group that they may or may not be able to clear that hurdle during that probationary period. I see Ms. Tate shaking her head, so she knows what I'm trying to articulate. I think you all do too, but every department is different. I want to be very clear on that, right? Um, who qualifies, pay, who's attracted to those departments, what's required in background, what's required during their probationary period. Um, that may be actually on par for all departments. But the onboarding is different for each department and who we're trying to attract. But Ms. Clark, Counselor Clark, and to your other colleagues, trust us. This is something we think about every day. This is something that Chief Sparks and Chief Fields, as well as Chief Mitchell, as well as Chief Smiley, that we share with department heads. Get creative. What's the plan? How are we communicating? What are we doing to attract Generation Y and Generation Z? Because that's who we're trying to attract. Majority of our employees are somewhere between boomers and X. Am I missing a generation? Most of them are boomers and X, and then you're going to have a lot of your younger employees in park and rec and police, and probably the youngest group, believe it or not, is firefighters and public works.
Yeah, and I do appreciate the challenge and don't want to sound as if I'm chiding. I'm more like thinking, how can we help, in our community engagement, so that it can be a little more coordinated. And then I just wanted to ask you about returning citizens. Do we have any jobs like ex-offenders or, okay. Are there any positions that would be open or that they could qualify for?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't say that's one thing several departments along with the Jefferson County Personnel Board gets right. I can take you to not one, but a few departments where second chances are working well, productive citizens who work hard, bust their butts, committed to the city, show up to work on time, take care of their families. It works. That's one of the things I can definitely brag about for the city of Birmingham as an employer.
Counselor Abbott, you had a question?
I did. Um, so we changed from the CAFR to the ACFR?
Yes,
What are-
ma'am.
I mean,
They actually found out that CAFR was a derogatory racist term that's used in South Africa, and so they had to change the acronym.
wow, well, I wondered after 22 years of hearing it one way to change, I thought maybe it was like the Department of Transportation. On page 117, 118, this is in the schedule of employers' contributions, and we have the health department,
Which page, I'm sorry?
117, 118, but 117 is where it's listed, the health department, and I was wondering, is that in our book as a comparison?
Oh, no, ma'am. There are a few employees from the health department that are a part of the city's retirement and relief plan. And I'm not sure how far that history goes back, but there's not very many participants from the health department.
Yeah, because there were no actuarially determined contributions at all.
Well, Ms. Abbott, don't mean to throw you a curveball, but there are two other groups that are in our pension. And that's the airport authority and the parking authority as well.
But at least that makes sense. The health department didn't make nearly as much sense as those two did, in my mind. So,
I agree. Well, definitely probably before your 22 years of service. That didn't happen during our time together. So
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I was just curious. So the other thing is, I was interested in, no, and I realize we're looking back, but we've got to look forward now. And healthcare and lawsuit liabilities are sort of floating around out there. Do we have a feel for what could be coming to get us, or are we pretty?
Miss Abbott, you, oh man. So that may be one of the most important questions. All the questions have been great, but I literally just left a meeting at 1:00 with the legal team leadership. So let me talk about healthcare first. It's simple, it's easy. Healthcare costs will continue to go up. We all know that. That's been the trend. It's consistent. America's population will continue to age. Alabama's population will continue to age. City of Birmingham population will continue to age. And our employee population will continue to age. And so, we got, on the pension side, we got different things for when that employee came in, but health-wise, it's pretty the same. So what we try to do on the employer side is absorb a lot of that cost so it does not pass to the employee. However, that can only go so far, and at a certain point, so after so many years, we got to go back to that employee and say, well, your cost is going to increase too. Because if the employer absorbs it all, we can't give a COLA. We can't give a merit. We can't do the necessary things we want in the supplemental. And so HR leaves a lot of that effort in anticipating what the healthcare costs are, negotiations and the bargaining and the back and forth and talking to our providers. That conversation is not going to change though. So that expectation is kind of baked in, and we try to manage that as best we can. I want you all to know I am very, very concerned about the other thing you raised, which is litigation. Courts have changed the way immunity is covered. That leaves cities very exposed. I don't think people are hearing the conversation, so I want to break it down very simply. We talk about the ability to hire police officers post the murder of George Floyd and the decrease in trust and the ripple that it sent across America in local communities and everyday people not trusting the police. Well, everyday people not trusting the police equals less people having interest in wanting to be police officers. But there is another side of that as well. If and when an employee issue involves a citizen and it makes its way to court in front of a jury, you have to assume the worst. Because that same mistrust on the police side of people don't even want to be, you have to consider what an everyday juror or citizen would see in the case before them. And so we do have to talk about increasing costs for potential litigation. That also requires us to be smart for our leadership and police department to embed in our beat officers and patrol and other units what are our regs, rules, and policies and follow them to the letter. It does mean how they operate their vehicles and our policies around chase, and I can go on, what we should be doing so we're not in violation of anything. But if and when something occurs, our lawyers are going to make one or two decisions. We were wrong, settle the case. We don't know what that cost could be. Or we believe we're right, defend ourselves, and you still can't predict what a jury does. And that cost can increase more. I hope I've explained that in a way where, as simple as I can put it, we should be definitely talking about cost increasing. And the truth is, we may say this is what we predict for this fiscal year, then we may have to come back to the council and say, oh, we bled through that in the first 7 months of the year. It's 5 months left in the fiscal year. Sorry, but a jury ruled this not in our favor. This is what we need to finish out the fiscal year. That's happened, I think, at least once, but maybe twice, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has to happen again. So you open it up, but I literally just had this conversation at between 1 and 1:40.
I was eavesdropping. But the other question was I know that back a number of years ago, nobody may remember this, the railroads thought that they were due money back from the city of Birmingham.
Right.
Did that ever go away or get resolved, or is it still lurking?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to tell you can turn to page 63 of your ACFR, and this is a section that will be of particular interest to you because it's our risk management. And this tells you what the city has already booked as a liability, and it goes into some detail about workers' compensation claims. It goes into our health care claims and our liability that we booked this year, past years. It also goes into those particular cases that you mentioned, starting on page 65, are all those railroad cases and where we stand with those. And finally, the claims liability as an overall is on this chart on page 66. So you've got all the detail there that you need.
So I've got more than what I needed.
Yes,
And the last question, that's for when I can't sleep. Repairs and maintenance on this pie chart, repairs and maintenance for the city are like 1%.
What page, Ms. Abbott?
It's page 12 of the,
I see it.
yeah, the one with the nice picture on the front. Audit presentation for year end June 30th, 2023. So on page 12, there's poor little repairs and maintenance at 1%, and my bet is it's below 1%, and we just rounded up. So I would like for us to fix that for future ACFRs. You know, because, I'm sorry, that gets us into trouble too when we don't take care of what we own and people get injured, like sidewalks. Have y'all walked on any city sidewalks lately that aren't downtown? I think we have real liability, not just play liability, but real liability. So I would like to see that 1% go up.
Yeah, Council, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Because I just wanted to make sure, just for clarification, because our chart of accounts have a lot of different GL accounts that flow up to repairs and maintenance. We hear you, and I think we have done that in the past for the deferred maintenance part of it. I just wanted to make sure for clarification, some of the things on there, why it shows a negative balance is because it may be something like fuel may be down this year or diesel may be down this year. So I just wanted to clarify that, but we hear you.
Okay, well, I just saw that little 1% and it seemed awfully little. That's all. Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
President.
so along the lines of risk management, glad to see that addressed in the ACFRA. But I think it would be useful for us to have even just in the form of a spreadsheet from OCA pending litigation against the city so that we have, some visibility on what's out there.
I think literally based on our conversation, she looks forward to engaging you and your colleagues on some one-on-one time and sitting down with you actually to go over a lot of things that would be of interest to you.
I'm sure it's a long list. How much time do we need to allocate for that conversation?
Oh, Mr. President, she'll call you.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, in addition to all of these railroad cases, I'm aware of some other things, but I would like to get a snapshot of, what's out there and what we need to be anticipating. Other questions? Council Williams?
Well, first of all, thank you for everybody involved in the work. I thank y'all all collectively. One thing that needs to be fixed is the organizational chart. The council appoints the municipal court, and the council does not appoint the airport authority. The mayor appoints the airport authority, so that needs to be fixed on the organizational chart.
Yes,
I
sir.
know we don't want to get the mayor-council act confused and then us to exhibit back to this.
What page, sir?
This is page 7 of the preface.
We will.
So I just
we will
wanted to
take care
make
of it.
sure. And then for the group that's the accounting firm, how many years have you guys, this is this will be the third year or this upcoming fiscal year will be the third?
23.
Yeah, so this is the third year.
Current
Okay.
presentation is third year.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Are we done with this item?
Well, we need to go read it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so that,
Mr. President, I do have something important. I want to encourage you and your colleagues, if you have any questions, please send them directly to Chaz Mitchell and Camila Gray Lewis. Please, pretty please.
okay,
I mean, you could, but that wouldn't be helpful to you. And I don't want other team members to ignore you or not respond.
all right. Do we have any new or old business we need to discuss? Not?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, that sounds unanimous. Meeting